on this computer. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Karen Harrison, and I am the host of Reiki Call. My website is www.karenharrison.net, and you can find this podcast on my website as well as on YouTube and iTunes and Google Play and Spotify. And my guest tonight is another of the licensed teachers from the International Center for Reiki Training, Jill Teal. And Jill, do you want to tell us what the name of your website is and your Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah. My business, it's the Minnesota Reiki Center. And so MN Reiki Center is my website, and then Facebook, Minnesota Reiki Center for Healing and Training. Instagram is also, I think it's Minnesota Reiki Center. And so it's pretty much the same name, depending on kind of how it fits on the different social media platforms. But you should be able to find it just by looking for any of those words would bring it up.
Okay, great. Well, Jill is the social media manager for the International Center for Reiki Training, and a massage therapist and a meditation expert, and an expert gardener. Grows 15-foot tall corn in downtown Minneapolis, and deep winter gardening, and I don't know, travel bug, and gosh, I'm sure I missed something. Runner.
I think you covered it all. That's great. It's funny that you say that, because I did have a student just last week that said that they saw that corn and that's why they signed up for the class with me.
Well, I know.
It's funny that you said, because they saw the article in the Reiki News magazine, and they're like, I want to take a class from you.
I know, to grow 15-foot tall corn and to grow anything in Minneapolis in the winter, where Minneapolis is known for its cold.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I thought it would be interesting to invite Jill to come on and talk about how she has battled Lyme disease. You know, that's a chronic health condition, and I thought many of the things that she might share could apply to anyone dealing with chronic health conditions. And I thought it'd be interesting to hear more about her journey. You know, I just know a little bit about it. How long ago was it that you ended up getting diagnosed with Lyme disease? But I imagine you were probably dealing with it even before you got diagnosed.
Yeah, that's correct, Karen. I want to say that prior to that, I'd had some other sort of symptoms, you know, that weren't as strong. Like I was breaking out in hives in my body, and I was having interesting, like, GI sort of stomach pain going on that years prior to that I was going in and getting looked at, but you know, everything always came back okay, and I'd been tested for Lyme's disease, and you know, everything always came back okay. When I got really sick, you know, that was about 5-6 years ago, is when then I got really sick. And now I'm actually, I would say I'm better from Lyme's disease. When you suffer from that condition, sometimes other things happen to your body where you can have like co-infections and other like viruses and various sorts of ailments. Like when your immune system is in that weakened state, it can bring out like a lot of other things. And so I with Lyme's disease, I also was dealing with other sorts of things like heavy metals and parasites, and you know, various sorts of detoxification process that I was going through, that contributed as well when the Lyme's disease flared up. But now I would say, you know, I'm better and I'm clear from the Lyme's disease. When you have a sort of chronic condition like that, like, you know, the virus goes dormant, so it's not showing up. But I still, you know, a lot of people still struggle with some of the sort of aftermath from it because of how much havoc it can kind of, like do to your whole system. But I would say that, I feel pretty like back to normal for the most part, but I know that there's times where I can feel stuff. It mostly attacked like my GI area. And so Lyme's disease can, for some people, it could go to the heart, or it could go to the brain, it can go to the muscles. And so different people have different reactions. And so for me, it went into more like the liver, gallbladder area. And so because of that, I still am working on my wellness, but I want to say I'm about 90% better, which is, fantastic, because at one point I was bedridden. And so, I've made tremendous um, progress in this journey.
Well, I know. I'm just thinking about when we went to a Reiki teacher retreat in Hawaii and we were hiking up Haleakala in Maui. And, Jill had lots of energy and outpaced me. And then, well, of course, what I was most impressed about is Jill seemed to fly over the mud, and all the rest of us were getting muddy. And she had on sandals and not a speck of mud on her feet. Like, what'd you do? Did you just, did the fairies carry you up the mountain and down?
Yes, they did, as a matter of fact.
So, well, how did you use Reiki to help you with the Lyme disease?
Yeah, before I was diagnosed, as I mentioned, I'd been through a lot of medical tests and so forth. And those medical tests always came back with no information for me. And somebody who's a Reiki practitioner, I mean, I still respect Western medicine. And with the pain and stuff that I was having, it did seem like a medical emergency. So, it seemed like this is something I should be getting looked into. But if you have any sort of autoimmune conditions or things like that, it can be really frustrating to go in and then to have them just say, "Oh, you're fine." But, like inside, you can barely move. Um, there was a point where, after a lot of different testing and stuff, I had gone to a different doctor, and something felt different when I went there. I would say that I felt a stronger connection to my Reiki and what I would call the spiritual guidance of Reiki. While I was at that appointment, I actually just like received, like, I would say, like, I heard a voice say not to move forward with anything that was recommended. And in most situations, I'm not encouraging people to not listen to their doctor, but it was such a strong feeling of that, don't do this, it could actually kill you. I had to listen to it. And so the doctor wasn't recommending that I do any sort of crazy procedure. They were just saying, you need this sort of CT scan and so forth. And for whatever reason, something just kind of stepped up inside of me and was just like, nope. And so what I heard was there was another way, and that it wasn't going to be easy, but I could do this with the help of Reiki. So when I went home, I didn't know exactly what that looked like. And so I just would kind of wait for the calmness after those moments of that sort of fear and worry would come through of, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Am I dying? I think I'm going to die. Like these sorts of the ego sort of coming in and creating all sorts of doubt and fear. And then there would be moments where there were other thoughts that would come in on, you know what, you need to go, get acupuncture. You need to start, working with a natural path. And so I would get these sort of suggestions, and then I would know, okay, so I would have a feeling of which acupuncturist that I needed to go to. And so I knew that by having Reiki, that I could do myself Reiki daily, and I could work with Reiki, but it wasn't going to be just Reiki and doing self Reiki that was just going to take it away. That I was going to need to work on my physical body, and that was going to require a team of other, health practitioners and experts that I trusted. And so I knew right away the right acupuncturist who worked with herbs. And so I started seeking those treatments, and they just started looking at it a lot differently than what I was being told. Like, it could be your gallbladder and stuff versus the gallbladder test that you had, there's nothing wrong with it. And so if you've ever had a gallbladder issue, you may have gone through a lot of time where they were said there's nothing wrong with your gallbladder, but there is. And so there were just a lot of different approaches that we started taking and doing herbs and things like that. And just started really working on a sort of detoxification plan that basically Reiki just kept leading me to different herbs and different other treatments. So working also with naturopathic, I was led to working with biophoton therapy. I did like hydrotherapy, so like Gerson therapy, working with juicing and cleansing. And so I really went into this huge phase of just getting rid of sort of everything in my body. And I actually lost about 40 pounds of weight through that process. And it was, I want to say, it was probably one of the most painful things I'll ever experience in my life. And to this day, I mean, I did think that I was going to die, and I was like bedridden. And until I started getting better through this sort of detoxing acupuncture and just using these other sorts of more allopathic treatments, to treat my body. What I would find is like over time, I could look back and see 6 months at a time that, I was slowly getting better, slowly getting better. I would change up the herbs and work in sort of use different herbs, because what can happen is that sometimes your body can get used to the herbs. And so then you need to change the herbs. There would be times where I would take a break from doing the herbs and just doing, let's say, acupuncture and kinesiology and sort of naturopathic care. And so at one point, I reached, after doing this, like for a couple years. I mean, and it's very common for people, with Lyme's disease and stuff, that it can take, if you choose not to do antibiotics and stuff for it. Kind of what I learned is that it could take 4 or 5 years to get better if you do antibiotics, and it can take 4 or 5 years to get better if you don't do antibiotics. And so there's no
Wow.
guarantee with like taking antibiotics, but it depends from person to person and sort of, what you need. I was so far into this process, like you kind of want to catch that stuff early. And by this time, like it had been in my system. And then along with heavy metals and various things over the years, it just like really like embedded into like many, many layers. Um, I
Yeah, can I
also,
pause you for just a
yes,
second there?
yes.
That's a lot of different therapies that you said. Biophoton, what is that?
That is a therapy that actually I first found while I was at a Reiki retreat in Sedona. It just so happened that the Airbnb that we were staying at, the lady that owned it was a biophoton therapist. And so it was kind of like, again, Reiki was sort of leading me. Here I am for this retreat, and we end up staying in this Airbnb. And she had this therapy, and so the biophoton therapy is like a light frequency, and the practitioner uses like what's called an electrodermal skin testing. And so that is a form of where they take like copper, and you hold a copper rod and they test different meridian points on your hand. And then they can determine what sort of viruses, any sort of things that are going on in your body. And it's been around for a really long time. And coincidentally, as I was looking into it more, it connects with sound healing in higher frequencies. And so I started then getting into sound healing, because of the biophoton therapy, as I was reading about it, I read that those really high sorts of frequencies. So the biophoton therapy, what it does is if it finds Lyme's disease, it would send this light frequency of the negative of the positive, and then it makes it like release. And so it was a really cool sort of treatment that I did while I was there. And actually, when I was in Sedona, it had tested that I was like having an appendicitis or something like that. And it felt like I really, like it was. And then it was gone. And so I found it for me, I was like, wow, this energy works really well for me. And it's just sort of a treatment. Like I said, you're holding like these copper rods to receive that scan. And that's been around for a while. A lot of kinesiologists that have moved from sort of the hand muscle testing, acupuncturists and so forth, have gone to this sort of electrodermal skin testing as a really effective way to detect nutrients, viruses, all sorts of things in your body. And then in a naturopathic sort of a way, they would give you supplements. And then in the biophoton, they use the actual light frequency. And so then there's no supplements. And so that worked and for a lot, and it helped me. When I got back to Minnesota, I found a practitioner. So I worked with her for a while. And then that led me to the sound healing as I looked more into biophoton therapy. So then I ended up buying singing bowls and things, and then bombarding my frequency with a lot of different notes and sound that I could basically, in a way, like be giving myself kind of constantly those frequencies that I need to heal. And so that was another path where Reiki had led me, just kind of to the biophoton, which led me to the sound healing. And so did you have another question or anything?
Yeah. So were you using crystal bowls or metal bowls?
I ended up being drawn to crystal singing bowls.
Uh-huh.
I love the metal bowls, but in the beginning, it was the crystal healing that drew me in, and so that's currently what I've been working with for a couple of years now.
Wow. Okay. Playing the bowls.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't have to be the only one asking questions here. Does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask Jill so far?
How did you incorporate the Reiki into all the other modalities?
Into the other modalities that I practice.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I originally was drawn to Reiki before I did the other modalities. And so Reiki was the, like, as a kid, I was really interested into like metaphysical things. And I imagine all of you guys, everyone here too, somewhat resonates with that, as like being here. You've always been drawn to that. Then eventually when I was led to Reiki, I started with that, and I was in my 20s when I started with that. I previously have a degree like in art and design. And so after a couple of years of being a Reiki 1 and 2 practitioner, that same sort of spiritual guidance led me to body work and said, you should do massage therapy and foot reflexology. It'll be a really great way for you to get hands-on with people and to work with the energy, and you'll get more practice that way. And that's how you'll build your business. And so I thought, okay, that's a great idea. So I did that. And it's actually exactly what happened. And so then I did eventually become an educator for Aveda, because I live in Minnesota. So that brand Aveda is here. And so I taught the massage and bodywork program there for about 6 years. And in the meantime, then had my own practice. And so then I was teaching Reiki, practicing Reiki out of my house. And then it just kind of became a natural way of bringing then Reiki into the body work and stuff that I do. And so like, my practice is more of one of Reiki and sort of body worker. And that's what I specialize in. And then that sound healing component came in actually and showed me it's actually a really great self-care way of just really, you know, for the self-care, but it also then came in. And then now I do use that in my Reiki sessions to help amplify the sessions when I'm working with people.
Great. Anybody else have a question for Jill? Yeah, Loretta, you got to unmute.
Excuse me. Jill, I was wondering what specific Reiki techniques did you use when you were, you know, when you were trying to heal yourself from the virus?
Oh, from the Lyme's disease?
From the Lyme's disease, I'm sorry.
You know, I did like daily self Reiki every day. And so like at night, I actually find that a lot of times the moon energies make my Reiki stronger. Like I really connect at night with that. I put it into my grid. And so to send like and started to envision the healing of my body. I also was called to about a year and a half ago to start running and exercising. And so that was a component that I didn't have because of the chronic fatigue that I had. And so when that message came through, it was a little bit like I initially rejected it because it's like I was so tired and worn out that it seemed like how is running gonna like fix this? But what had happened is that I had also developed a frozen shoulder, and I couldn't move my arm. And so when I received that information, I guess I realized I had some sort of a block or something around exercising that I don't even really know where it came from, because as a young person, I played soccer and ran and played sports. And then somehow as I was in my 30s, I kind of just stopped doing it. And then I just sort of resisted that information when that guidance came through. Well, what had happened was a couple months later, it had cleared. And so that's kind of the beautiful thing about Reiki. And when it's working with you, sometimes you're just like, what? Well, that didn't work, you know? And then you're like, oh, I get it. Like, that's what's going on with it. Oh, funny, you know? And after all these years, you think you should know better, but you still like, in mastering Reiki, you're always healing and growing. And so you're like, oh, I'm still healing and growing. And this is great. And so I felt like I could run. And then I started like this walk run, and then this walk run became running more and so forth, till I eventually was like, you know, let's say like in May, I finally started running. By October, I was running 6 miles 3 times a week. And so then there was this whole other thing of like, wow, I think I've really been like limiting like my views and beliefs. Like if I thought that I couldn't do that, you know, and there was just this sort of realization, and that like really moved me a huge percentage more of being healed. My frozen shoulder healed completely. And then all of that blood that was flowing and that movement was like, because when you run, and you can actually too, like if running's not your thing, you can get one of those rebounders, those jumpy trampoline things, and then there's no impact on your knees or joints, and you can bounce like for 2 minutes like 5 times a day, and it's equivalent to like 30 minutes of running. And it's like this huge sort of like that motion of like pushing your kidneys and your liver is like a detoxification thing. And that's like what my body needed. It was like it couldn't get everything out, you know? And so that became a huge way. And then through that, you know, and answering your question as well, I would visualize being healed. I would put that mantra into it. So I would use movement. And so I was also using then Reiki with movement to heal toxic emotions. And then also my body. And then that also, like through all that, it made my Reiki stronger. And so I noticed that by going through all of that, it actually increased my ability to channel Reiki, because there was a lot of stuff, there were a lot of emotions that were trapped in there, along with the virus. And so it was this process of trust and hard work. But it really deepened my connection with Reiki by doing that. And so those were some of the main techniques that I found that really helped me. And then along with the team of the people that were working with me, and then I would always activate Reiki when I would be there around there, so I could bring in the benefits, and so we could always find the best solutions while working together. So kind of connecting my space with their space, and so always just really bringing in the best information for my health.
Well, another thing I know that I learned about Jill when I traded a session with her in Hawaii at that teacher retreat is I felt Jill sending Reiki through all my meridians, and it was a somewhat electrifying experience. So is that something that you used for yourself to intend to send Reiki through your meridians?
It's just a way that, like, as my Reiki, like as I've healed my body, and when I work on them, it's sort of a common sort of experience that people have, like with my connection with Reiki. And so I could feel it. And a lot of times, like if I'm talking to somebody and doing like a consultation, and Reiki with the eyes is scanning their body, like I can feel energy a lot of times moving through my meridians and like where it's going, different foot reflexology points like on my foot where I could feel like, oh, okay, it feels like it's going here and so forth. And so then when I'm working with people, it works a lot the same way. So I wouldn't claim to be like an expert on meridians. And I do, like, reflexology is something that I work with, but I don't have like training in acupuncture. However, because I can feel how things move through me, it's led me to like researching and looking into that, so I know and I can feel that this is what's going on. And so in a way, a lot of my energy or style is kind of like a Hayashi style of treatment, where I do work with like the organs and the meridian systems. And it's funny because when I first took my Reiki training, I had more of the Takata style, let's say, of training that we didn't learn about the Hayashi Healing Guide. So over the years, when I had found out about the Hayashi Healing Guide through the evidence-based history of Reiki, it was like, oh, wow, like it was just, I was already sort of working that way. And so it was a nice validation to see that was a style that was being practiced, and that's what that was. And that's how Reiki was guiding me to work. Though I didn't have any specific training in that, but that is how the energy often flows through me, and how many people will experience it if they're having, like, we know people will have kind of emotional, physical, spiritual, combinations. There's all these different ways you can experience Reiki, and when people have more of that physical experience, it can be similar to like what Karen explained that she felt when she received Reiki from me. And so it's very common that I hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like buzzing through my body. That was,
It
yeah.
just goes. It can get really strong too sometimes.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. I think you also talked about juicing, and I think I remember you saying that you did a lot of celery juice.
I did. I got on that celery juice. You guys probably, maybe not, have seen the, Anthony Williams with the celery juice, the medical medium stuff. And, so I got into that a couple of years ago, I guess. It was kind of, it's pretty popular now. That was one of, because that, that juice right there, that celery juice, is definitely one of those that, can clear a lot of that stuff. I did find though that for me, I couldn't just do that one alone. I do know that like part of my background, I looking into the elements and so forth, and celery is kind of a cold, considered cold. And so after a while, like it can actually kind of impact your spleen a little bit. And so you can add a little ginger to that, to warm that up. And so for the long term, I wasn't able to just like do that for years and years, but I kind of like I said, I let the Reiki energy kind of guide me, or not kind of, the Reiki energy does guide me in what I do. And so the celery juicing was something I did for a while. I do other juicing, other smoothies, bone broth, very simple, fruits and vegetables. There was a time there where I couldn't eat very much. I lost a lot of weight. It was almost, an unhealthy amount of, it got to the point where it was too much, but I couldn't help it because I was sick. But I lived mostly on, juices and, liquid food for a couple of years. I would say that was, I just couldn't digest anything. I was in so much pain. But since then, I still juice. And so, wellness is something that I still.
John, did you find it?
Everything that I kind of tell my students or my clients and how to take care of themselves, I practice those things, the self-care and the wellness. And so that has been a big factor in getting better. I will say though, it has taken years for me to get there. It wasn't some sort of an overnight solution. And there was one thing, and sometimes I have people who find me because of this and want help. And sometimes when Reiki comes into your life and it shows you something about your life and sort of how you can better your life. And when you look back at the beginning of when all this stuff has happened to you, and you're suffering, and then you make the progress and you see how much you've learned and what you've grown. There was a lot of things in my life that I had to let go of back then. And so this was, kind of, think about the last election, this is kind of around, in a way we're looking at around the time of the last election. And so there was a lot of toxic stuff that was like, that was building up, and not specifically because of the election, but I do remember, I have strong memories from around that time of various sorts of toxic things, lifestyle things, and so forth, that I was growing out of. And so as this stuff all came up and surfaced, there was more than just the healing of Lyme's disease. Like, there was this sort of, with holy fire and the holy fire energy, it was this revealing of my authentic self. And it's taken years for me to get there. But there were many years of that stuff building up in there. It didn't just happen overnight. And even though I've been doing Reiki for many, many years, since 2000s, for a long time, I've had this energy. I've been working with it, working with other people. It still continues to teach me new things, and to help me. And one of the things in this life for me was that, to improve my health, to work through my health, to find solutions of removing toxic emotions, healing my body, and using Reiki as a way to be able to do that, and showing me how to do that. I would say I probably was a little harder for me. And I can make it a little easier for people because, I didn't have anybody really kind of helping me through it. I just, I was counting on Reiki to just like, are we still going here? Does this feel good? Do we need somebody else now? I would just kind of go with, my intuition. I used my intuition in working with Reiki, the whole way through. And when I guess like looking back now, I've learned so much from that journey, and I can't really say I'm so glad that I experienced it, because I would never want to go through that pain, but I'm glad to have the knowledge that I know now, and that I can use it to help other people, and that I can direct people to solutions, and help them avoid um, things that might take them longer and so forth through this journey, to make it a little bit easier for them.
Wow. Well, I think one of the main things I'm hearing, Jill, is that uh, daily self Reiki and tuning in and listening to Reiki guide you into each step of the way, what treatments to pursue, what exercise to try, what practitioners to go to, every aspect of taking care of your body. And it sounds like you really finally tuned into listening to that guidance.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think before that, it would have been more of a ego analytical thing. Well, maybe I should do this. I don't know, and this was just, well, if you're going to die, like kind of like you don't have anything else to lose. So why don't you just try this? And I kind of remember even hearing something like that. And I'm like, yeah, you got a good point. Like,
Mm.
I really don't have any other options. So,
Yeah. Well, I want to just take a pause here and see if there's anyone else that's had any questions that have bubbled up, because I know a few of the people on the call have struggled with their own issues and are in various stages of overcoming them.
I have a question, if that's all right, Jill.
yeah.
So for quite a few years, I believed I've had chronic Lyme disease, but I've been working with another source, another person, and they don't think that's what's going on with me. I'm wondering, do you have any intuitive experience with just picking up whether other people specifically have Lyme disease or similar things as you went through?
Well, a lot of these things can, they can disguise themselves, as like these sort of viruses, co-infections, and, parasites, heavy metals. What happens is that most people have like similar to if you've had chicken pox, you have the shingles in your bloodstream. Most people, if you live in an area where there's ticks and so forth, you've been bit. And so most people would test positive for Lyme's disease, but it's a matter of, is the virus activated and affecting your body?
My
And
understanding is it's a bacteria, not a virus.
or bacteria, either way, like, it can go dormant, and then, and it can come back, like it's, but to answer your question, I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you intuitively feel that, I feel like I'm getting a yes from that you have that. And that if you're feeling that as well, but depending on who you go to and what they test, it can be very hard to determine, because it can be in different parts of your body. And if you don't, let's say, get the test within the 48 hours, it can be very difficult to find out if you actually have it or not. So when I was looking into it, a lot of people said the same thing. No, you don't have it. No, you don't have it. Because everybody thinks if they have something wrong with them that they have Lyme's disease. So they were trying to like go into like that direction. But when I found the electrodermal skin tester on both the biophoton and my natural path, it tested positive for it. And so I was like going for months and years, like kind of like, no, I don't have it, until like a couple of years ago when I finally was like, yeah, I do have it, And so, but I thought the whole time that I probably did. But it was so hard to know, and so many people kind of have an opinion of what it is. And so because, you know, like you're saying, it's bacteria, or like you know, or in a way, I mean, it's like a virus. It just kind of triggers, and it can, like, you can have it in your body and then it can just be activated, or you can have it in your body and it might never be activated at all. um, so, you know, if you haven't been working on that or working with things on that to see, and you're still having symptoms, I mean, I think I would look into that or start working with. What I really tried to make sure that I did is that I worked with several different people, because I found if I was working with one person, then all of that information was only coming from that person. So when I would go to somebody else, they might have a different idea about it. So I know they all had my best care in mind, but it was just, sometimes it can be really tricky when you're dealing with all of these sorts of factors, you know, Epstein-Barr, you know, heavy metals, parasite, all of these things that I'm talking about. It can be difficult to find exactly what it is. And a lot of people will just say, no, you don't have Lyme's disease, or they might just say, yes, you do. So if you haven't done any like electrodermal skin testing, that is something that could potentially find more, some of the other things that you might have going on with you, to see if it can pick it up through that way.
I did this electrodermal skin testing is new to me, but I have gotten testing through something called a CO machine, which is like a space age Rife machine. Have you heard of those?
I've done, yes, and I've also worked with a thing called the biocharger, which is like Tesla coil, Rife. It has a lot of different things. What I know, and I don't know about like specifically, but sometimes like the Rife frequency, it's kind of like Holy Fire 3 coming in. The vibration is sort of raised up, and a lot of people that like use Rife and stuff, it like for some of the things that are going on, you'd have to be wearing it for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because there's where the energy is, and where some of these sort of autoimmune conditions have gone, like on its own, it's not exactly enough. And so the
Okay.
testing itself is, I don't know exactly about that, but I do know that from people that I know that work with Rife and other combinations of Rife, um, the electrodermal skin testing can be more effective at looking at the diagnosis, whereas the Rife would be more using the frequencies to sort of treat the
I
stuff.
actually haven't done Rife, but I have done the CO machine, and I
Yeah.
recently had a CO machine session where it didn't pick up any Lyme disease in me, and I've been assuming I had Lyme for several years now, and I've been on herbs for like maybe 2 or more years now, and I'm not seeing any like changes or results. So I'm just sort of confused right now. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what's going on or exactly what direction to go in.
Yeah. Well, maybe look into, see if you can find somebody. A lot of times, like a naturopath, if a naturopath does
I
the
have a good
electrodermal.
one who's been doing applied kinesiology with me with herbs.
So the naturopathic, with the electrodermal skin testing can actually determine, because see, the other thing that I found is that, and this is where like herbs and doing muscle testing with the electrodermal skin testing, they can determine exactly if that like brand of herbs works well for you. So like when I was working with a naturopath and they do the kinesiology, when I went in with the electrodermal skin testing in my herbs. So, for instance, like somebody who had given me magnesium glycinate, thinking you need to detox these heavy metals and so forth, and this will be perfect and this will help the Lyme's disease. Well, when I went to the skin testing, she's like, no, your body doesn't want that. It needs citrate. And so so what happens is that the electrodermal skin testing has more precision in dialing in exactly where you need and what brands and what herbs. And so some of them might be great, and some of them, you might find that you need to have a little bit of change on that. And so that's a personal choice, but that's something that I did find that with my supplements, I noticed that some of them were causing pain. And when I brought them in, and even though they were good brands like Standard Process and, or, you know, really good brands and stuff, well, it turned out I had a sulfur allergy. And so my body couldn't detox the sulfurs properly. And like a lot of the herbs in Standard Process are sulfur. And when we think of beets and all of these things that you need that are good for detoxing your body, if that pathway isn't open and you have an adverse effect to it, then those herbs can be like poison. Even though they're good herbs and they're quality herbs, they might not be the exact herbs that your body needs. So those are some of the things that I've had to do over the years that's led me to things. So it's like still a good practitioner, you know, but not working for what I need for my complicated situation, great for other situations. And so that's where I found the electrodermal skin testing, to be able to really dial it in, to take a look at all the herbs that I was taking, to be able to take a look at the vitamin D that was going into my body, to be able to properly give me the exact amount of dosage that I need, and to dial in on the exact ones that will harmonize best with my body.
And so the
Cool.
sorry.
All right, so go ahead, Helen, and then I want to see if we have any other questions.
So the electrodermal skin testing is part of the what, I can't remember what you called it, biophoton. Is that the same thing?
So biophoton therapists use electrodermal skin testing. So do some naturopaths. So do some acupuncturists.
Okay, electrodermal skin testing. Okay.
So for you, if you're on herbs, you would like, let's say, Google or find people in your area that are either acupuncturists that are herbs that use electrodermal skin testing, or another naturopath that uses electrodermal skin testing, instead of, it's a more sophisticated version of kinesiology. And so they have the ability not only to determine what you need, but if it's a good fit for your body.
Okay, all right, great. Do we have any other questions? Okay, Pat.
There. Thank you, Karen, for hosting this group tonight. Appreciate it. I don't have Lyme disease, but I've had several people ask me, would Reiki cure my Lyme disease, or could Reiki help? So what is your answer if somebody asks you that? Well,
my answer would be that I would never doubt the benefits of Reiki. So I guess like what I would, if somebody came to me, I would be open to trying it, because Reiki, being that it's a spiritually guided life force energy, it always does what it needs to do. So I'm not in control or the decision maker of that person's health. I would encourage them to receive the Reiki, because I know it doesn't do any harm and it can always provide the benefits. The best case scenario, they're fixed. In my experience though, what I would probably do, having a client like that, we would work on it. I would let the energy flow, and then we would talk about other things that I've done that they can keep working on. And I would give them some referrals to other people, and so they could work with a team of people, and then figure out what works best for them. And so I would say, yes, it can, but everybody is different. And so Reiki is going to work with each person the way that it needs to.
Thank you. That's good help.
Yeah. And I would like to add that the ethics of Reiki say that we should not ever promise a cure or say that Reiki cures anything. It's a Japanese technique for stress reduction that promotes healing. and we need to be open to the results rather than, looking for something. And the research shows that Reiki is very good at helping to reduce stress, reduce anxiety, help with depression and pain. And as Jill said, to try other therapies in addition to Reiki for any sort of chronic ongoing problems, because it's probably going to take a whole body approach and a number of different things to help with things that have been chronic and long standing.
Thank you for adding that, Karen.
Good, Karen.
Basically, that's
That
kind of
was
what
good.
I was saying, but
Yeah.
he said it like, by the book, which was
By the book.
yes.
This
That is right. That is what I would basically say in
Thank
the way
you.
that I said it.
Yeah. Comes from teaching ethics at every single class.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of curious, Mike, if you have any comments or questions as I'm thinking about you and your story over there.
Well, yeah, thank you, Karen. I was actually going to just say, I didn't, excuse me, I didn't really realize what the topic was going to be tonight. I've been wanting to listen in for a long time. We have known Karen for years and always been a great admirer. But ironically, I just want to say how much I admire Jill because, as Karen knows, I had my own series of issues some years ago. But 4 years ago, I got bit by a tick and got Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And I was in the hospital for a month and in ICU twice and really came close to dying at one point. I came through that in good shape, didn't have any long-term damages. And then ironically, I got it again this summer from another tick bite. And I was in the hospital for 3 days this time. So I guess I'm kind of like a cat with, I don't know how many lives I've used up here now, but I think I've got a few left. But anyway, it's not as, well, it can be fatal, but it doesn't have the long-term effects of Lyme disease. I just so much admire you for your strength and perseverance.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Yeah. And Mike, I had that also as a kid.
You had it too? Oh, wow.
I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever and I was getting very sick, and the doctor had given me some antibiotics, and my mother started pouring through medical books and just kind of figured out that it was from a tick bite. And she told the doctor that she thought I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And so he gave me tetracycline, which was the antibiotic of choice at that time, and I got better.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Karen.
Yeah.
Well, see, like it touches a lot of people. A lot of times, like I said, people have, that it's in there. So with this, from what I read, is that, like in your scenario, like it activated right away. And in other scenarios, sometimes it's stress or various different things. And then another tick bite can like basically activate the virus when your immune system is weak. And so you could be doing fine, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa. And so you may not have that bullseye or, sort of classic case, because it could come on a lot differently depending on where in your body it attacks and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we are going to need to wrap up because we are coming to the end of our hour. Certainly let me know what other topics you all would like to hear about. We either have a speaker or a Reiki question and answer, and I'm very honored to have you all on here tonight and appreciate your being here. And do you just want to say one more time, Jill, how to contact you?
Yeah, the Minnesota Reiki Center. So MN Reiki Center. So MN is in Minnesota Reiki Center. Minnesota Reiki Center on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend booking a session with Jill just to feel her unique style of Reiki. It's so amazing, and she can do that over a distance too. Do you do your distance sessions over the phone or Zoom, or how do you do
them on Zoom? I'm about, I think, like 6 to 8 weeks booked out. So there's a little wait, so just so you know. But yes, over Zoom. And so or over the phone. Actually, I'm very flexible. So, you know, whatever works is we can do that.
Okay, well, wonderful. And my website is www.karenharrison.net, and find Reiki Call on my YouTube channel, Karen Harrison Reiki, on my website, www.karenharrison.net, and iTunes and Spotify and Google Play, and I think that's it.
You're amazing.
Well, thank you. And you also need to check out the International Center for Reiki Training Facebook page that Jill manages, because she does a great job with posts, and you'll find posts that are inspiring and educational and fun, and done a super job.
You're on my team, and I also have a great team of a couple other people on there that without, you know, I need them. We together, it's amazing. But thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It was so nice to see you all and meet you all.
Yes. And someone asked me if I'm on Instagram. Well, that would be a worthy goal. Yeah, no, I'm not on Instagram. Oops. But I'm thinking about it.
We'll get you on there.
Yes, yes. Okay. It's fun and easy. Yes. Well, it's probably going to be easier if my daughter would help me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much. And love and hugs to you all.
Thank
And
you.
Reiki Circle is the fourth Monday of the month. So join us for that. And thanks, Lon, for joining us from the Netherlands. Okay. All right. Good night.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.